private loans or maybe a higher rate interest loan, but we have not seen any ill effects thus far. We have not seen an influx of private loans as a result of that. So we've had very good results with that process. Another thing we do is we do not automatically process loans at the very beginning of the term. We wait until about day 14 into the semester to process refunds. So if a student has a loan or a Pell that maybe is more than what the cost of tuition is, instead of doing it right away, we know that life circumstances may have a student adding or dropping a class that would require them, particularly if they dropped, to pay back part of their financial aid. Then we'd owe that back to the federal government, so the student would have to pay us back, which then means that if they don't, then there's debt, and then we go through the tax intercept program. And so we purposely wait until after the second week of the semester to start that process, to help limit the amount that students may have to pay back in case they do change their enrollment status. And then for students who are in their grace period for repayment of loans, as well as those that have fallen into delinquency, we partner with an external firm to conduct outreach to these students and to work with them and to talk through them exactly what this means and what the process is, and to help make sure that they stay on track in repaying their loans and help keep our default rate low as well. For financial literacy, anytime a student wants to drop or withdraw from a class, they do receive a message saying that this may have a financial impact on you, and they're encouraged to reach out to an advisor or somebody from the financial aid staff as well to talk through that before they do that, so that way they are aware of what the ramifications might be of them doing that. And then as well as we do have a communication plan for students who are offered or requesting a loan, so it talks through what does this mean, what are your responsibilities as a borrower, and it includes steps so that a student can go through to calculate what their actual loan repayment will be when they do have to start paying it back, so that they don't have sticker shock at the end, and they know exactly what they'll be expected to pay upon graduation. And this just shows, as a result of our work, we have taken great steps to lower our cohort default rate. It is now sitting at right about 11% when it was over 20% just 3 years ago as well. So we've really worked to bring that down and help students repay as well. So, any questions?
The dropout is 44% after year one and 62% after year 6. I think it's a real positive that if people are not going to succeed, that they get out after the first year, and it looks like y'all are doing that, and which I think is a positive. I mean, and again, Ivy Tech's different, I realize, but it's just very costly to someone to continue if they're eventually going to fail and keep adding up their debt. So anyway, I'm glad you're counseling out 44%. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I think that's positive for the people involved. And obviously the Workforce Ready grants are a real opportunity.
Yeah, the Workforce Ready grant has been a real benefit to our students, so we really appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you.
Final three here. Coming up next is Purdue University, Dr. who is the Senior Vice President for Teaching and Learning. Welcome.
All right. A lot of what you've heard we're doing too. So I'll try to draw distinctions as we go through. The student to advisor ratio that we're using at West Lafayette's 225 to 1, and I honestly don't know what they're doing at the regionals. So it's a little bit different for Purdue than IU. So IU, I'll say, is a stronger system in how they do their governance. We're really more of an affiliated universities, if you would. So the regionals have a lot more autonomy over what they do with their programs. So I will present some information about them as we go through as well. Just real quick to remind us where our locations are, and a couple of things that I'm our retention numbers are very different given we have very different, just like Bloomington with the regionals and the IU system, you end up with very different results because you have very different students that you're starting with. When I start thinking about risk, I mean, one of the ways I want to come at it maybe just a little bit different is to think about risk factors, right? And I got a lot of exposure to this when we were working with the acquisition of Kaplan or Purdue Global right now. So the folks at Global spend a lot of time thinking about things like, are you low income or Pell? Are you first generation? Are you URM? Are, you know, those kinds of things. The other thing we typically don't think about is the academic risk, or that becomes part of the admissions process, if you would. But the profiles of students that you have obviously are really going to dictate how successful it can be given the students walking in the front door, if you would. So here, just to highlight the differences in our campuses, if you would. So Pell, you know, some people use it as a proxy for being low income. You know, it's only 16% of the students at West Lafayette there. You go to Global, it's 60. Our regionals are, you know, mid-40s. The second thing is, are you a full-time or a part-time student? And that's, you know, oftentimes you're part-time either because of family situation or you're having to work to make college. And West Lafayette, I have 6%, but oftentimes that 6% is really seniors who only need 8 hours to graduate, right? I mean, virtually everybody walking on in West Lafayette's a full-time student. And then you go to the regionals again, it's up mid-40s, and you get to Global, it's 88% of their students they're all working adults just trying to, you know, work towards a degree. Are you, this is the IPEDS definition, are you 24 or under, which is a traditional college student, or are you over 24? I have a handful of students on the West Lafayette campus who come back. We do have a special program for them. We have about 350 military vets on our campus, et cetera. Vast majority, you know, I look like a movie where if it's going to have the college with the Ivy on the, you know, that's who we are. You get to the regionals, their age distributions are coming down quite a bit in the last few years. They have more traditional populations today. Then you get, once again, over to Global, it's 83% are adult learners, and that's what we would hope. And then finally, the question of IPEDS, if you've looked at the race variables in there, the people at IPEDS say, be really careful in how you use those data. There's a lot of reporting concerns, and the way they go through and classify is at a session this fall. And basically, if you're Hispanic, or you check that box that trumps everything, and the other thing that's really making it difficult is more and more people are 2 or more races. And some people use that as a designation, some don't use it as a designation. So what I did was a little bit different, because oftentimes what we do is we put up something called URM students. The one number I felt the most comfortable with was percent white. And the differences on our campuses are very different, if you would. Mine, West Lafayette, 64% white. A lot of the students who are non-white are international on my campus, right? It'll be different as you go across these different campuses. So, but what I'm simply trying to say is we're different as campuses, so I don't have system solutions, if you would. The admission question, if you would, West Lafayette, we run what's called a holistic review. We have for several years at this point. We look at a wide range of information on particular students, but at the end of the day, coming to West Lafayette, what we're really looking for is a very strong, academically prepared student. We don't have any remediation courses on our campus. We view within the state, if you need remediation, there are better places for you to start your academic journey and then try to come to West Lafayette. That's not true at the regionals. If you go up to Fort Wayne, they have conditional admits, a 2.0 to a 2.5 GPA, and then if you go up to Northwest, they go back, you know, you heard earlier somebody said, well, we don't want to classify students at risk for the, you know, to stigmatize, but they certainly have, they're very similar to Fort Wayne in that respect. All of that said, at West Lafayette, we are doing a summer conditional admit program at this point, and it's for the student who's just below the threshold. Their high school grades either weren't that good or they didn't test very well, but you know, when you look at the rest of their report, they look like if they're a West Lafayette student. We are bringing in, so last fall we had 8,357 freshmen started with us. We started around 170 in what we're calling an early start program. They must come in summer. We are throwing support at them. Our first year retention for most of the students is about 91%. For this group, we're in our third year. The retention's about 82% at this point. So in a way, it kind of confirms that our admission process is working, if you would. On the other hand, we're really glad we're giving opportunity to these students, if you would. They're predominantly Indiana residents, and they're disproportionately to the rest of the population, first gen, low income, and underrepresented. So it is helping us serve these populations. We put you in an at-risk profile. Once you're identified as that, it stays with you your entire time. For example, my conditional admit students come in the summer at West Lafayette. I'm giving them, they have an academic advisor, but they also have a coach. Because we see two dimensions to life, if you would. I want somebody to be working with you on, you need to be taking these kinds of courses, these are career opportunities and all this within you. But at the same time, we're running into students. The issue is not academics. The issue is, I'm a single parent and I can't find childcare. The issue, so these coaches are working more on that side of the equation for us. And we're learning from, I think when you were visiting with us a year ago, we talked about Purdue Promise and how successful, and we just gave them an award, and how successful that program has been. It's a lot of the stuff outside the classroom that these students need support with. Predictive analytics is a question that you wanted, and we have worked, and Northwest has worked. There's a product, the name of the product is EAB SSC. And what that stands for is Educational Advisory Board Student Success Collaborative. They are in lots of universities all over the country. Georgia State is put up as the poster child of somebody who's been able to put a solution on campus and it's going to lead to increased graduation, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the other schools are not able to get the success that Georgia State has. Especially what doesn't seem to work is the predictive analytics of EAB's SSC product. It has some really good things for it. It does a good job of calendaring it. So students can be in my office, and now I need to make an appointment across campus in another office. I can do that with the student right in my office. It gives them reminders and things like that. The notes protocol, we have built a notes protocol for people to create a record, so when the student comes from one office to another, they don't have to tell the same story again. I can the advisor, whoever they're working with that time, can go, oh, I see that you're interested in getting an internship. So I think the students feel really good about that you're not telling the story over and over again. There are progress reports in there that seem to work pretty well, so it's another visual, if you would, is this student on track towards making progress toward a degree. And then campaigns mean I can go in, I'll give you an example. I can go in and I can find every student who failed a particular course last term. And maybe now I can find the students who are trying that same course this spring. I can go in, zero in on that set of students, and I can now go to them and say, you know, it didn't go well the first time. What are you going to do different this time? For example, here, you know, we have a tutoring office. These are the kinds of support that are on campus for you today. So it's a very micro level tool, and we're using that to great effect. What doesn't work, the way it was presented to us when we worked with the vendors, they say, it's going to predict how likely it is that this student's going to graduate, and it starts freshman year, and it says I'll say in chemistry 115, you're an engineering student, if you don't get an A or B, you won't ever graduate as an engineer. The predictive ability of their model for us was as good as flipping a coin. It didn't tell us anything. The reason why I think is the data that they used was from a very different type of an institution with different students, so there was no predictive power. We're working, and the other Big Ten schools, Ohio State, Michigan State, same problem. They just can't. We really want this, and it just isn't working today. So we're working to try, with the vendor, to try to fix that part of it. We're still excited. Let me give you, this looks like a Metro map, if you would, and I was hoping for a bigger display, but what each of these, the red line is all the offices that report to me. So I have advising, I have student support programs, I have the Disability Resource Center. Anyone who's got a closed-in circle, what they're able to do is they're able to go into this system and look at the student record and understand what they're doing. The green line is, I can't see it either. Oh, gracious. Well, the blue line are the colleges, all right? So the colleges are where the academic departments live. The gold line on the bottom is residential life. We think that's an important part of what we're doing. That black line that goes off to the right are all my tutoring type programs. They're I have 41 different programs on campus. So the math department runs a program, the biology department runs a program. Now what we're trying to do for students is make it easy for them to find them and make it easy for the faculty to find them. And then the green line are other campus level programs, if you would. So the most important thing what this is doing on campus is it's changing my perspective. Everyone tends to, I'm working and I'm helping students and I'm doing something. It's now very visible who else is working with that student. And what we're finding is sometimes somebody from our Career Center will reach out to the academic advisor and say, hey, this student was in the other day talking to us about internships, but they really seem confused about what it means to be a major in, this department. So that's really the richness that we're getting from the tool at this point. You ask questions in there about how much assessment we do. And I'm going to give you measuring success in theory. And oftentimes we posit the question, I want to know if I adopt this program, what will be the effect on retention or graduation? And this is how we always ask the question. That was in theory, and this is in practice. And what I mean, it's almost impossible to do a controlled experiment to say that I'm going to isolate what the effect of this particular thing, because there's so many factors that enter into student life. But we do spend a lot of time trying to dig to the bottom of these things. We're trying to make sure that, where we're putting our time and our money and our effort and working with students is being successful. But oftentimes it's a combination of different things that are going to drive success for the student. We have proactive advising on all of our campuses. We track retention, we tracked graduation rates, and we're doing that in all of our campuses. The colleges and the deans, when they're meeting with their chancellor or the provost, that's a conversation on every campus. So we're constantly looking at what are we doing, are we being more successful? Sometimes what it does, it leads to questions. So what are the roadblocks? So we might do a study, I think last year we looked at West Lafayette, what are the courses that have the highest DF or withdraw rates on campus, and what are we doing about those things? So we do dig in, we run those, and I know they're doing those on the regional campus as well. The other thing that we're doing on our campus is something I learned from the University of Iowa. We have created something we call the Boiler Success Team. And what I have done is I have a person who basically is a project manager working directly for me. And what I do in the spring, we're going to do this in early May. We bring together anybody on campus. I don't care. You can be faculty, you can be student, you can be an advisor, you could work in the res hall, I don't care, who has ideas on how we can help students be more successful. And we're really looking for two things. The number one thing we're trying to identify is what are things that get in the way. And the number two thing we're trying to identify, what are things that really enhance their education. So if you want to say there's the positive and the negative side of the coin, if you would, we then go through, so last year we generated about 24 ideas. We had over 200 people in the room for about 3 hours. And then I take a smaller group and we sit in, so where are we going to put our effort? And what I'm really looking at are campus-wide efforts. That project manager I talked about then, it is her job to shepherd that through as we go through the next year. Because what often happens with the committee, and the universities typically work with committees, and I appoint a committee and I give it, and they come enthusiastic to pursue something, but then their real work gets in the way. It's not anyone's real priority, and I forget to push the committee to keep working on it, and all of a sudden it's the end of the year and we didn't get anywhere. So let me give you one example. This is the first project we did. We have a process on our campus about changing majors. You think that's easy. The person that I hired her about 2 years ago. I put her through a process mapping training and design thinking training and things like that, so she's getting to be really good. So she process mapped, this is going to be a picture of what it looks like for a student to change their major. That was 2 years ago, all right? And basically the day depended upon if I'm starting in A and going to B, I could do it in this time window and I had to fill out this paperwork and it was different. Some departments had different requirements depending upon which major you're switching to within a department. It was insane. Today, the web page, right? Now, we really simplified it. The process is the same for the entire campus. All right, you want to change your major, here's the time frame that you can change your major, here's the paperwork, and it's now electronic rather than paper. Here's what you have to do. The departments still set the requirements. If you're going to come into my major, you must have completed, chemistry 115 with a grade of C or something like that. So the departments still control the quality walking in the door, but they can't say we're only going to look at this in the month of September or something like that. And this is working really, really well. And it was something that no one had control of, if you would, or it wasn't from the campus perspective, we weren't looking at it. Today, the project we're working on right now is the evaluation of transfer credit and how we're applying that across our different programs. It's a hard nut but when you take this focused effort, we're feeling pretty good about that. You've heard students who leave. At West Lafayette, we have a common drop policy for all universities in Purdue. So it's a university level policy. If your GPA this term is under 2.0, you're on probation. If you're on probation, our advisors have a community of practice. You need to come up with a plan for the students on probation. If your GPA is under 2.0 the second semester and your cumulative is now under 2.0, then you're dropped. When they drop, there's two things that happen. In the best world, you're able to have an exit interview and you're able to talk to the student and create a plan for what are you going to do next. Oftentimes, if they're Indiana residents, we counsel them. Ivy Tech might be a really good solution for you. We have, especially in my campus, we're about half out-of-state students. A lot of times, mom and dad aren't very happy if they're dropped, and they're not thinking that going to a community college in Indiana is a good idea. They want them to come home. So we don't have we lose a lot of those students, relatively speaking. And then last but not least, I'll take any questions you might have.
I have one question.
Yes.
It's interesting that Purdue Northwest, after year one, 33% drop out, and after year 8, 37% drop out. And I don't know if we're comparing apples with apples, but it would suggest that the vast bulk of dropouts occur in year one, which to me is a positive. That and I wonder why it works that way at Purdue Northwest, but that's not the situation at
Fort Wayne or
I get confused. Westville.
well, yeah, no, and that's part of the. So Purdue is we're the favorite friends of HLC these days because we've done, we've created Purdue Northwest from Westville and Hammond. We've done the work with IU up at Fort Wayne.
Well, and then Fort Wayne, you 23% the first year, but then 45%. So, it's very. I'm sorry,
No, that's fine.
I'm a broken record here, but the costs of staying in school and then dropping out after 2 years, 3 years, or 3.5 years, it's just so much greater than if you drop out after 1 year. And it seems like Northwest Hammond has figured out how to identify the students that aren't succeeding. Now, I realize it seems to be analytically driven as opposed to,
right,
more discretion. But anyway, I just wondered if you probably, I realize you're at West Lafayette, so you probably haven't had a chance
well,
to look at this.
the one thing about what they've done started at Hammond, that I go back to that EAB SSC product. When you do put that in, even if you're not able to get the analytics working the way the vendor would suggest it's going to work, you do have insights into the students much more so than you do with other products that we have. And so when we adopted it, we spent some time with them, and they have been more, to your point, it's if you have a student who's very unlikely to be successful, and somebody earlier on said if we have a student, I think it might have been Indiana State under 0.85 in the first term, we're just going to drop them then because there's little hope for that student, if you would. So Hammond, I believe, took that and they had the hard, if you want to call it, it's the hard conversation, right? And they got with the students and that. Now, one of the things with all the changes that have gone on in the different system, we are, Jay Ackridge, who's the provost now, has started something new within. He is bringing the chancellors from the different campuses. We've now met 3 times. His plan is to meet 6 times a year to talk about issues like this. I can put this on the agenda for the next one and ask the folks from Northwest to explain, especially to Fort Wayne, what is it that you're doing that's leading to this change? Good question.
Okay. The thing that I find bouncing around in my head, to me it's not, it's less, kids dropping out. It's more identifying the kids who are at risk of either failing or at risk of succeeding, and counseling them to the right, the right thing. It might be a 2-year degree. It might be a certificate. It might be something like that. But I'm struck by, Indiana is blessed with a rich public-private higher education system in our state. And there's incredible diversity within that system. Each institution is very different, serving oftentimes some different populations and that kind of thing. But I'm also struck by, you all need the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't see a lot of collaboration between the institutions. I mean, you talk about predictive analytics, we talk about data analytics and all those kinds of things. There's some vendors out there, some people trying to invent it themselves. And there has to be a way of collaborating in such a way that we can move quicker to trying to solve these issues here, because they're really important to the institutions, but also important to the students in the state. And I guess my point is I'm hopeful that the talent we have sitting in the room trade cards with each other and say, hey, let's share ideas and let's figure out how we can get behind something that provides us the data and the analytics we need to guide our decision making and to counsel these students before they get to the point of high debt and earlier into something where they can find some kind of success.
Yeah. Okay. I agree, Chris.
Without going into too much about it, because we could spend a lot of time, but I do think some of the work that Ken and others are trying to do with transcript sharing between campus to campus as students go from one to the other and having more really good information there is one of the ways that we can help to actually encourage that kind of collaboration.
I'd agree with that entirely.
So thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it. We're going to move on now to the University of Southern Indiana. Do I see Dr. Mohammed Khayyam? Is he here? No. Sorry, I didn't have my work changed here for me. So
I'm Shelley Blunt. I'm the Associate Provost for Academic Affairs here at USI. And Dr. Kayyum wanted to be here, but couldn't leave campus today. So you're going to hear a lot of the same things the other universities have done. I'm going to dig in. I'm not going to answer every single question, but I am going to dig into a couple of different initiatives that we've tried, and you're going to hear predictive analytics again as we look at this. And this is what I wish campus looked like today, a nice spring day with everything green, but hopefully in a few more weeks we'll see that. So USI, around 2014, we did change our admission standards, and at that point we no longer continue to admit students conditionally to USI, and so we are not identifying students at risk prior to admission. Also around that time, we implemented a series of programs to strengthen and or implement. We began implementing or strengthening programs to help students succeed. And these are very similar to all the programs you've heard today. They are in our response to the Commission's survey. But I do want to highlight just a couple that maybe are a little bit different than what some of the other universities are doing, or maybe a different twist to what they're doing. We developed a new core curriculum in 2004 prior to the Commission's work with the statewide general education core, and our core aligns very closely with that. But part of that, and what our faculty felt very strongly about, was making sure that we did have a first-year experience course that is required for all first-year students. So every student is required to take that. It is a transition course, but here we're also talking about, with those students, what do they want to accomplish while they're here at USI? What are their career goals? And we're also talking about that financial literacy piece at that particular moment. Additionally, we've always had midterm grades. They weren't always required, but what we did was we changed that. We felt that midterms was too late. If a student already had a D in week 7 or 8, that's not enough time to actually have them complete the work that they needed to do to raise that. So one of the things that we did, we implemented an early alert grade. I got a little bit of flack about this by the faculty, but we require faculty to report grades for all 100, 200 level courses at week 3. So we require that they do some type of assessment to show how those students are performing, or if they're even attending class. And we're reaching out proactively at that point to see, do you want to stay at USI? And if so, how can we help you get back on track? We moved our midterms up to week 6. We wanted to give more time for students to seek help in order to be successful in those particular courses. We do have required advising for all first-year students, and also for students that have undeclared majors or who are not yet admitted to professional programs. And many of our academic programs do require advising all 4 years, and that has been helpful as well. And then we have a variety of programs that you've heard about today: living learning communities. We have a care team that will respond to any type of report that's submitted, whether it's about student conduct, student academic behavior, student mental health, and so forth. We have a variety of tutoring, writing center resources, and so forth. But one thing that we started to do is the predictive analytics piece, and we haven't really done that before. And we got this data starting around 2015, and we didn't really use it in 2015. But it really it's a predictive analytics tool. We're using Student Retention Predictor, and it's looking at a variety of different things, and you can see them on there: high school GPA, the number of days they've been an applicant at USI, what high school they're from, their financial need, what kind of diploma they've received, and if they attended one of our open houses. And like I said, we didn't really use that, but we've really, we had an advising center in our College of Business that decided to really dig into this and see how can we use this data to help students at risk. And I'll show you some data. Oh, and what the graph shows you is the students then, based on these factors, they're given a score between 0 and 1. If they're 1, they're most likely to be retained at USI. If they're 0, they're most likely to leave. And we really kind of focused on that orange and a little bit of the yellow region, the 0.25 to the 0.65. And you'll see some data. It's not really pretty for 2015. But if you look at the tool, in 2015, it predicted that 71.6 of our students would be retained, and we actually retained around 69.3. So it's fairly accurate. And again, we really didn't do anything with that data in 2015. We started looking at it a little bit in 2016. But in 2017, we really had a developed comprehensive plan on how we would use that data and how we would outreach to students that showed up at risk. And you can see that we've had a significant impact in 1 year on retention using that particular data. Now, this data is only for the College of Business right now. All of our other advising centers are now implementing it, and we hope to see this trend continue. So when you look at all of this information, and I'm going to give you some data. The red is the students that are predicted not likely to persist at USI. I'll give you, so in terms of, well, our first year retention rates are in the low 70s. I don't have that exact number. I don't have that exact number today. I can find that out for you though. So with this predictive analytics data and looking at all of the other initiatives that we have in place, we have seen positive trends in our first year retention data and also in our 4-year graduation rates. So in our first year retention data has jumped from around 66% in 2011 to around 71% overall for the 2017 cohort. And our 4-year graduation rates have increased almost 16% from that 2011 cohort. But even with this, we're not satisfied with those results, and we know that there's room for improvement, and we know that there's many factors that are affecting student progress, including student mental health. But we're also finding that the ability to pay for college is a significant barrier for our students. And I'm going to show you some data that's not in the report, and we collaborated with our Office of Business Affairs. So when you look at this data, you can't read it real carefully, but it breaks out outstanding balance by students by semester. First semester freshmen all the way to second semester seniors. And what we see is that in the fall, we have about $10 million of unpaid tuition and fees by the due date in the fall semester. 25% of that is from first semester freshmen who do not have the ability to pay for college. And so we really wanted to focus on that because we think that is a significant barrier for us. And the second largest group is second semester seniors. They're graduating, so the incentive to pay on time is not quite there. So when you look, we also wanted to look at financial aid data. So I'm showing you some federal financial aid data for USI. We dispersed over $47 million in federal financial aid, with the largest portion being direct student loans, followed by Pell Grants, and then by Parent Plus loans. About 47% of our students receive loans, and about 28% are Pell eligible. We also dispersed about $10 million in state aid, with 21st Century Scholars Program and the Higher Education Awards being the largest portion. So if you combine the federal and state aid programs with USI's institutional programs and our private scholarships, we're awarding over $80 million in aid in the 2017 and 18 academic year. But what's interesting to us, though, is the number of students that are declining or canceling their student loans. So what we're seeing is students do not want to take out loan. They do not want to have debt, but they're still not paying their bills on time. And that's preventing them from enrolling in the next semester. So what we wanted to look at this, tackle this problem, and what we're finding, and I'll tell you from my own experience in the provost office, students will come to me and say, I don't have money to pay for next semester, can you help me? Then they'll go to the financial aid office, and then they'll go to the foundation office, or then they'll go to the bursar's office, and they're trying to find every single way that they can find money without tapping into loan money. And I understand that to some extent, but there's only a limited pool of resources that we can provide. So we wanted to have a more consistent approach to how we dealt with these students. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is by creating a financial care team. So we have some work to do. We're in our initial stages in that. We also looked at student debt as students are leaving. And our aggregate student debt for USI in 2018 was $21,478. We're doing a fair job of counseling students about student debt. The Indiana's average is around $29,000. Nationally, it's around $28,000, and that's what that graph shows you. So, and we have remained relatively stable over the last few years. And our students are relatively good at paying back their loans. The bottom line is the default rate for USI. We have a default rate around 6.6%, and that's considerably lower than Indiana's default rate, as well as nationally. And then it's about 0.5% lower than that of four-year public institutions. So what we wanted to tackle is, what are we doing as an institution to help students with their ability to pay for college? And so we established a financial care team this past year, and I know some other schools here in Indiana have one as well. And what we're doing is we're really kind of starting to look at the data at a more granular level, you know what I mean, level. And we're going to try to implement programs and initiatives that will target students at risk financially. This includes evaluating all of our financial literacy programs, being more proactive in ensuring that students are aware of all financial aid available to them, and giving them counseling about when is it a good time to take out a student loan to continue your education. We're also creating a financial peer mentoring program, and we're creating a financial wellness center. We wanted a one-stop shop for students to come to when they're facing financial crisis, whether it's an emergency situation or it's more long-term care. We also want to be more proactive prior to them starting USI, coming up with a plan with how do you pay for college before you enroll at USI, and really even working with parents and how to establish that. So I just want to, and we do all the exit counselings and things like that as well. But the things that we wanted you to take away from this is the predictive analytics is working for us right now. We want to continue to explore that and maximize its impact. The ability to pay for college will continue to be a problem for our students, and we want to look at how we can enrich our financial literacy programs to help students overall. The one thing that we want to happen, which is exactly what Commissioner Hubbard has been speaking about all day, we want to decrease the number of students leaving USI with debt but no degree.
I really have a comment. It's not really a direct question to you, and it's following the chairman's comment before. I mean, I also thought that there are so many different approaches here. And what I was wondering and trying to go through my mind, even though of course it's important that each university and college and institution keep their individual needs in mind, and going with the same idea of let's try to learn together and what's working better. Is there something that the commission can do in terms of tracking a number, or trying to make it a little bit more numbers based instead of because there's a lot of anecdotal and stories here. There's a lot of work that everybody has done in a completely different ways. So is this something that the commission can help and track a real number, or is this something that we want to leave it open for all the individual institutions to follow through, I guess?
That's a great question. I think to a certain extent we can do some. We can provide, across the board persistence. We can provide the information we provided on attrition. So I mean, I think if we have specific metrics that we want to have, then we can then compile them and show the statewide impact of those. That we can show a statewide, default rate, a statewide debt level, those kinds of things. But in some ways, it's actually more meaningful if you do have that information by campus. I'm not sure what a statewide debt rate means, for example, if there's wide variance between the kinds of campuses and the amount of borrowing. So I think there are some metrics that we should have at the state level, but I think it's actually more actionable in terms of change if we have it at the campus level.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I wasn't even sure if that was but that's what it was going through my mind, is that, you know, I mean, it's so different here. Do we want to live it like that or not? But that's kind of what I was wondering.
No, I think there are some things that we need to think about, and I think after we have the Vincent's presentation, thank you, I think, unless there were other questions, after we've had that, we might just want to, we don't have much time today, but have a 5-minute conversation or so before we move to the business part of our agenda, which I promise won't be long today. But we might want to have a discussion about, so what does this all mean? So where do we go from here, and how do we use this information? What are we asking for next? And I don't know that we'll resolve that, but we would like some direction from all of you. With that, we're going to turn to our host school today, Vincennes University, and ask John Livers, I believe it is. Yes, who's the Student Success Center Coordinator.
Thank you. You're one of the few that pronounces that correctly, so thank you.
Well, I ask.
I've been called worse. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. We're going to talk really on 4 different areas here. We'll discuss the University College, our prerequisite remediation program, the student support services, and also a spec initiative that kind of evolved with the use of these other 3 items. With the University College, these students come to the university and are lowest academic students as far as math and English scores. They've tested into both English and math, the 008 classes, which put them at risk. What we do with that, with those students, is they become a part of the Student Success Center. The coordinators will serve as their advisor. In their first semester with us, they are a part of a freshman year experience class that we teach. That class is designed to introduce them to offices and staff on campus, important areas, but also to acclimate them into college life and to help them acclimate themselves to the university. Aside from the class, we also meet with these students 4 times through the course of the semester individually, which usually means about once a month. For sure once a month. Some students need more, some students don't want that much, but for sure 4 times a semester we meet with them. We also use the Remind text system, which is a system that we have that through my email and their cell phone, we can send messages back and forth to each other, which is usually a better way to connect and make sure that they know what's going on campus, or reminders of things that they need to take care of routinely through the university. Once the students have passed their gateway math and English courses, they're going to transition to an academic advisor in their field or their major course of study. But what we find is, even though they transition, they still come back to check in with us, and we'll still check in with them, because when you deal with an at-risk student, or a student that maybe hasn't had those successes in school, having that significant person as a part of their college life is important. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that helps the student progress. For our fall of 2016 students at University College, we are on track of reaching our goal of doubling their graduation rate on-time completion at 150%. And we're on track with that. The next part was our co-requisite education. In the fall of 2016, we had a developmental program of math and English prior to this time, but it might take 1, 2, 3 semesters of developmental classes before a student would get into a college level English and math. With the co-rec classes, students are able to take a co-rec class along with the math class, depending on the test scores, and proceed through that English comp or the math, the MATT classes are our tech math, the MATHs are our transferable math classes. And what I wanted to point out here, for the students in the co-rec classes, as opposed to the students in the standalone or college-ready courses, we're getting closer and closer to the same success rates in those classes. So the students in those co-rec classes, they are proceeding and progressing at almost as well as the students that have tested into those standalone classes themselves. For student support services, again, it's important that the students have the support or feel that there is people out there to help them. We have a number of services, and I don't need to read this, and this is not every area. This is a number of offices, but it provides services for all students, not just freshmen, not just students with different academic needs, but anyone who has a need. And I think one of the things that when we talk about at-risk students, and we talk a little bit more, some at-risk students are easy to identify because we have those predictive analytics, the first semester or the first year students or the first generation or academically, but we don't know how life comes along during their time when they're at school. And some of these areas, when they're developing those relationships and getting to know those students, that's a huge support for students when life happens. And we'll discuss that a little bit more too. One of the things that we do for all students, we have an early warning system that we call TAPS. And that is the opportunity for faculty members in their class to send notices, emails to students when their attendance or a performance is going on that maybe is not going to lead to success. When they send those notices out, it goes to the student, but it also goes to the academic advisor. So the faculty members are making those advisors aware of what's going on in the classroom. But it's also offering to the student the opportunity to meet with that classroom teacher, but also providing them with some information about resources on campus and where they may go for those resources. The other thing with the student risk profile, in our predictive analytics, we are able to take a look at students, how they start the semester. We'll use different factors for our first semester, first year students. As you can see, very similar to what some of the other institutions are doing. The high school GPA, did they complete their FAFSA on time? When did they register? Were they prepared? Did they think ahead? Did they plan ahead? The correct placement, the developmental classes that they're in, the number. Were they first generation? And we look at the score, and when I look at this, or when I think about it, I think of a speedometer. And since we're a school zone, we want to go slow. So the lower the score, the better off, or the least number of factors that student's bringing to us. And we want to be careful when we talk about predictors, because we don't want to say we're predicting that this student is going to be successful or not successful. We want to, there's indicators, because we don't know how that student is going to get to college and how much work they're going to do and what's going to be involved in their day-to-day life. So they're predictors in the sense that we can say, well, this student or people with these factors may be less successful, but we don't know that student until we develop those relationships, until we get to know that student. And that's something we have to do. For the preceding semesters, the continuing semesters, VU, their academic standing, again, we still use high school GPA, we still use first generation, but we look at the semester before and we see how many TAPS notices did that student get? Did they miss classes? Did they not do well? Were they not prepared for class? And also, are they still in the correct classes? And then lastly, the real-time indicator. The profile, the student risk profile, tells us how a student is starting that semester. The real-time indicator, of that bottom one, tells us how they're doing through the semester. So on a week-to-week basis, we can see if that student is getting notices, are they starting to have issues in class? Is there a concern? And as you can see, TAPS notices, if a student doesn't go to, if the student fails to attend classes for a total of 2 weeks, they can be dropped from class for non-attendance. So are they being dropped because of attendance? Do they, at midterm, do they get a D or an F in a midterm grade? All indicators of possible not success. So when we look at that, when we look at the student profile, the top left is our first semester, first year students and their profile scores. And as you can see, the bottom one is the profile score. The side number is the percentage of students that ended the semester in good standing. Okay, so as you can see, if their profile score is 0 or 5 or 10 or 15, they're roughly at about a 75 to 80% success rate. Not hard to believe. It seems to make sense. But then about at 25, a risk profile score of 25, that's when the students fall below the average for the class. And that's the area that we want to take a look at. But you can also see that line is fairly gradual. But now look at the bottom right. Those are our continuing students. Those are the ones that continue the next semester, the following year, and that's a really good sledding hill. That is something that those students, and I make light of that, and I don't mean to, but it's an indicator. Those students, after that profile score of 25, they have a very difficult time. And the one on the right is 5 semesters. So we've been accumulating this now for almost 3 years, so we feel like that's a good sample of information. But that continuing profile score speaks to how important that first semester, first year is for students. And it speaks to being able to make relationships and making contacts, and the importance of a student having a significant person in their lives on a college campus. Because those are the folks that are going to pick up on a student not coming to class maybe a couple of times, or maybe they don't see him around the rec center as often, or maybe they don't come in to eat in the dining center and the lunch lady says, "Where you been? I've been missing you." Those are the things that are going to help students just feel a part of things. But how do we, again, these are indicators that we can see just by using student records. It doesn't take anything out of the ordinary, and it starts. But how do we look at how they're doing on a week-by-week course through the time? And that's the real-time indicator, because as you can see, no matter the profile score, just about, there are still some students that are successful. No matter if their profile score is 0, 75, there's still some students that are ending on good standing. So what's the difference? What helps them with that? And what we found is on the real-time indicator, if a student, these are freshmen here, and the left to right is fall 16, 17, and 18. The green, I guess if you want to call it green, the larger of the ones there, those are our students, our freshmen, who finished with a real-time indicator score of 0 to 20. So no matter their profile score, if they had a real-time indicator score of 0 to 20, 82% of those students were successful. So we kind of talk about ability coming into the semester, but maybe that's also hard work and dedication to what they're trying to do. But it's almost straight across at 80 to 82%. If a student falls in the range of the 25 to 50, it drops to 34, 26%, 55 and higher, and those are the students that received a lot of TAPS notices, maybe got dropped from some classes, had D's and F's at midterm. The chance for them being successful is much less. Now, and again, that speaks to a couple things. One is, when we saw this information, we looked at it, we thought, how in the world can we keep these kids in the 0 to 20 range and keep them from getting into that 25 to 50 or 55 to 100. So we came up with the SPEC initiative, Student Profile Early Contact. And again, it's important for us, it's important for students that they know that they're supported and that they have someone on campus they can go to. So what we did during our Start VU, every Start VU, we'd run that list and we would send it over to financial aid. Financial aid would pull that list and they'd look at it and they'd say, okay, out of these 100, 25 of these kids don't have all their material turned in yet. They haven't even completed the FAFSA. So they would contact those students and they'd say, we still need some information. We need you to turn this information. If you need help with that, here's a contact person, give us a call. For everyone else who had already had gotten the financial aid in, the Student Success Center sent them an email welcoming the VU, offering them an opportunity or just a person to get a hold of during the semester or in the summer prior to classes starting. The deans, after about a week or two, they would provide that same list with the students in their areas. They sent another welcome. In this email, they were sending things about what was going to be going on the first week of classes, things to look forward to, and also a contact. The two individual advisor contacts, advisors were sent their advisee list before classes started. They sent an email to their new advisees introducing themselves. And then a second contact occurred in about the second week of the semester, just saying, how's things going? Yes.
Do you guys measure how many of those students are opening those emails like prior to arriving on campus?
Not that I'm aware of. And that's a great question because who knows? And that's why we use the remind system with the students that we have, because it goes straight to their phone. We do the same remind system with our Start VU students, so we're still able to send information to them through the remind, but we don't know how many students have responded to that. No, but I do have something that speaks to maybe some of them are picking them up. And then lastly, what we do is the Student Success Center on their opening week, we send a list to all advisees with those profile scores, continuing first semester, making them aware of that. Then through weeks 3 through 8, every week, through weeks 3 through 8, we send a report of the real-time indicator to the advisors saying your students, has a score of a 5 or a 10 with explanation, and they're contacting those students to offer support.
I'm so sorry, but are we getting close?
I got one more slide.
Okay, I apologize.
I
don't
know,
want to cut you off in
I am
anybody
dancing
else,
as
but
fast as I
I'm going to
can.
lose some of my people here, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm sorry. The last part, with what we found, again, we want to keep students in that RTI range of 0 to 20. For the fall semester, after we did the SPEC initiative, we went from 57 and 58% in the fall, 16 and 17 to 66% that ended in the 0 to 20 this semester. It's only one semester, but it is an 8% improvement. So we feel that what we're doing is at least working, and we hope that we can continue, but we're going to continue to review this and maybe find a way we can find out how folks are doing. And I do apologize for talking too long. No.
This is a real quick question.
Yes.
Do you know how many advisees per advisor you have?
It really depends on the majors and the areas. It may go from 5 to 100. The Student Success Center, we have, depending on where we are, usually 4 coordinators, and we'll pick up some of those areas, and we'll have 75 advisees on the average.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We are really, bumping up against our time limit here, I know. So I know we cannot have a really thoughtful discussion about where we want to go from here. But if you will trust me to, spend some time thinking about this and get back to you. In particular, just for purposes of those in the audience, I do think that we would like to continue the discussion about what in a from both a process way and exactly how we can use this opportunity to actually promote the Workforce Ready grant in a really meaningful way. And so, much like we did with You Can Go Back, which at that point there was legislation that passed that said either you would reach out to those people who have some college or no degree, or you would give that information to us, and we would reach out and try to make sure people knew about the ability to have some financial flexibility and SAP flexibility for that. I think we are in a very similar situation now, which is, we obviously are seeking additional funding to market the Workforce Ready grant. We have some funding for that already. We're committed to trying to reach those students, and I don't know what that means in terms of how you reach those students as well. I heard a lot of you saying we are doing that, or if we're not doing it, we're going to do it. I guess we're saying, we'd like to figure out how we can do that in partnership with you and can provide a better way for us to make sure we're reaching those students. I don't think that is the only takeaway, certainly not the only takeaway from today's meeting. I think, if nothing else, an impressive presentations really showing us your deep commitment to these students that clearly, we certainly applaud. But we have the same concern you do, which is both the concern that when people don't make it, those debt levels, what can we do to keep them on a path? So I'd like to continue to work with those of you who made presentations today in your schools, and I'll be taking my advice and counsel from these folks, as you might imagine, of other things that they might want, including data points, which, I think some of those came up today. So with that, I would offer that, Mr. Chairman, if anybody has a final comment they'd like to give to us as staff.
I'll be fast. Well, first off, I've been very impressed with how creative and how open-minded all of you are to trying to figure out the best way to deal with the challenging population. And I'm speaking of not Bloomington and West Lafayette, but the rest of the campuses. And so I'm impressed, and I particularly like the fact that y'all are searching for better ways of doing things. And then I have three thoughts. One, I think for those students who do drop out, I hope you will consider providing their contact information to the commission so we can reach out to them about Workforce Ready grants and be in communication with them about their future in addition to your doing that. And secondly, I think that it would be helpful if you reported annually the amount of debt that the dropouts have and at what point they do drop out. Because I was very impressed with the last gentleman from Vincennes pointing out that in the first year you can figure out who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. And boy, if we could figure out who's not going to make it in the first year and counsel them out, it's a huge plus to them, and counsel them in a new direction. And then I think finally, I think it would be helpful if you reported to us how much debt your graduates have, and hopefully that's declining over time. I know I got some information today that at Purdue, at least West Lafayette, I don't know if this is the other campuses, it has been declining. But I think it's important that we have a transparency on that, and hopefully we're all working together to minimize the amount of debt that our graduates have. So, but anyway, I'm so impressed with how open-minded, creative, and thoughtful you are about how to address the challenges that we're facing with a population that a very large percent don't complete, and figuring out how we can address that to help that population as much as possible. Sorry, Teresa.
No. I think that the challenge for us, and I know it's the challenge for you as well, which is, and I also think that the last speaker spoke to this as well, which is sometimes there are factors that go beyond, we think we know what someone is going to succeed or not, and then sometimes they defy the factors. And by the same token, in the total, it's pretty clear that you have a pretty good set of knowledge that they aren't making it. And so how do you, in a really thoughtful way, balance opportunity for people based on what they choose to do and step up, and then really just an unacceptable level of debt in their life that's accrued when they don't make it. And I think that's not an easy place to be, to try to figure that out. So we obviously need to work with you to figure that With that, Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to conclude this and move to the business section.
Yeah, I would just add my compliments to the universities and especially to those that presented. Thank you for coming in. This was a really thoughtful, interesting discussion. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Appreciate that. We're going to move on to both academic and some capital projects. I just want to remind the Commission that you're going to have both expedited and discussion items on the agenda. Please remember that these have been carefully looked at by staff. They've gone through our committee process. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. Today we have one academic degree program for full discussion. It's the Doctor in Nutrition and Dietetics to be offered by Indiana University at IUPUI, beginning on page 7 of your agenda book. I'd like to invite Dr. Raphael Bahamundi, am I close? Interim Dean of the School of Health and Human Sciences, Indiana University, to present this program.
Well, thank you very much for extending the invitation to present the program. As you know, one of the biggest challenges in the healthcare costs is obesity. Obesity leads to metabolic diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. So registered dietitians have played a huge role in treating those conditions. And starting in 2024, the registered dietitians, in order to sit to the registered dietitian board, is going to be moved up to be a master's level. So our proposal is to go to a doctorate in registered to go to a doctorate in nutrition and dietetics for multiple reasons. Number one of the proposal allows us to have two pathways. One pathway says any student or any major, undergraduate major, will be able to go through that track, because now as students we have a prerequisites and they can go into that track and then be able to get a doctorate in nutrition and dietetics. As now a student that have a master's in, they already have an RD can also achieve that doctorate in a shorter period of time. Registered dietitians, work together with physician assistants, work together with MDs and occupational therapists in the healthcare system, and they're becoming more involved in the diagnosis of conditions, and they're basically that could lead to the reduction in the cost of healthcare. We're seeing that also, we have a lot of students that want to be registered dietitians, and the current pathway there is, for example, I'll give you an example, students in the health science that want to become a registered dietitian, they have to do a bunch of prerequisites in order to be able to sit into the boards, and also to do the internship program. With this doctorate, it would allow a student to come in from a bachelor's in health science with a minimum amount of prerequisites, go in and have the doctorate in nutrition and dietetics, and be able to sit down for the boards as a registered as an RD. The other challenge that we're going to have as we move to the master's level in 2024, getting faculty. Now you're going to have master level faculty teaching master level students, and that's going to be a problematic. So with this doctorate in dietetics, so this is a professional doctorate in dietetics, will allow us to have faculty, and we'll be able to recruit faculty at the clinical level with a doctoral level program. So we'll be able to teach the students that they'll be coming in possibly at the master's level. This is a truly interdisciplinary program. The students will take classes in the School of Medicine, Public Health, School of Education, the Physician Assistant program in our school. So really, I think I'm really excited about this program. It'll be the first one in the country, hopefully, if it gets approved. I know other states, other universities are already looking forward to do something similar to it. Minnesota sent us, one of the universities in Minnesota sent a survey out asking people, what do you think about a professional doctorate in dietetics? So I mean, we're excited. Hopefully this program gets approved, and I think it's a win-win for students right now, and for the universities, create a new level of clinical faculty with doctoral level training.
Dr. Ken Sauer will come up and present the staff recommendation.
Just one question. With the credentialing, would it be a PhD or a PDD?
No, it's it's a professional doctor. It's a doctor in nutrition and dietetics. Doctor D&D.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. In the interest of time, I'm simply going to offer the staff recommendation, which is that the Commission approve the Doctor of Nutrition and Dietetics to be offered by Indiana University at IUPUI. Be pleased to respond to any questions.
Are there any questions for Ken? Do I have a motion? Second? Thank you. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. IU has its new program. Congratulations. We have 2 academic degree programs on the agenda, page 35, for expedited action. May I have a motion? A second? Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Excellent, thank you. We have 1 capital project for full discussion on the agenda today. Indiana University Bloomington, the renovation of Foster and McNutt quadrangles and lease of space project. It's on page 39 of the agenda book. I'd like to invite Dr. Tom Morrison, Vice President of Capital Planning and Facilities, to present this project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. On behalf of Indiana University and our trustees, we're proposing to you today to renovate 2 very large residence halls in the coming year on the Bloomington campus, both the Foster and McNutt complexes. These were both built in the early 1960s, which makes them roughly the same age as me. And we all need renovation at times, and so do these residence halls. And they are 2 of the largest residence halls on campus. And in our plan since 2010, we've been actively renovating all of the older residence halls, and we had a plan that took us through 2026. The trustees have approved accelerating that plan and to become more aggressive in it and try to complete it by 2023. We had, you may have read, a mold outbreak in both of these complexes this past year, and a big part of that is the older systems that are in those buildings, the HVAC systems. They do not have central systems, they do not have central air conditioning. And so this will allow us to empty the buildings for the coming academic year, do full renovations on them, and this is a total of about 2,500 beds that we will take offline. It is 550,000 square feet, so 2 very large residence halls, and cost will be $56 million, funded by residence hall programs. I'm also asking for your approval on temporary leases where we will engage in leased property off campus to assist in housing returning students. We do not have any problem with housing our freshman class, but given dropping off that many beds, we may have an issue with returning students, and so we are leasing property within the Bloomington market for a year to offset that. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Dr. Ken? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's Alicia that's going to present the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I think Tom did a great job covering the project, and so just want to say that staff recommends approval of the project.
Okay, any questions of Alicia? I have a motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. We have expedited one capital project on the agenda for expedited action. It's listed on page 47. May I have a motion? Second.
Could I have some discussion?
Let me get a second.
There's 2, you said 1 or 2?
There's one capital project for expedited action is indicated on page 47. Okay, then that's, I'm sorry, that is typo. One is Indiana University Bloomington Armstrong Stadium North Grandstand replacement. The other is Ball State University new Multicultural Center. So I have a motion. I have a second. Discussion.
Yes.
I'm concerned, or, well, I don't feel we need a multicultural center. I guess I'm questioning. Ball State has one of the best student unions. It's one of their best facilities on the campus. And I just feel that that could be used, as opposed to spending $4 million of taxpayers' money. And we spent 50 years making sure that we integrate the minorities in our schools. And it seems to me counterproductive to set up a $4 million facility to segregate. And we have a student union building that is beautiful, has meeting rooms, has a student activity center, and one of their objectives is to learn about the rich diversity of people on the campus. So I just would like to, well, I'm going to vote no for that reason, but I may be the only one, but that's kind of how I feel. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. Becca, would you have any comments on that, or?
Thank you, Becca Rice, Vice President for Governmental Relations for Ball State, and we appreciate all viewpoints and comments, and I think that's exactly why having a multicultural center in the center of our campus to make sure that we're supporting all of our diverse students. It's not for one set of diverse students or another, but to support diversity as a whole. So we appreciate your comments and respectfully request approval.
Will this building be used for classes, or is it more just a gathering space?
So it will have support services, areas for gatherings, areas for seminars and other sorts of lectures. It will have meeting space and those sorts of things as well. So it'll be a variety of different sorts of facility options in the building, as well as a coffee shop.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. We'll move forward. Thank you, John, for your comments. Okay, we have, you've got information items starting on page 49 of the agenda book. Is there any old business to discuss? Any new business?
At your own peril.
At your own peril. The next meeting of the commission is scheduled for March 14th, and it is at IUPUI in Indianapolis. Thank you so much for your attendance and discussions. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. I know it's a long day from this morning.
Bailing down.
See some of you tomorrow.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Mike, for, I told Beverly, aren't you glad I'm not a brain surgeon? Yeah,
That was right off
I'll follow up.